So my prompt that I'm responding to is this a good book for teachers of young children? And as all of you know, I am the only non-education major in the class. I'm a psych major. So for me, it's looking at it from a bit more of like a psychology perspective. Um, but I said yes, it is a good book for teachers of young children. I have mainly three reasons for saying so. First of all, I think that it sets an example of passion within the classroom. On page 50 in The Girl with the Brown Crayon, she says, and I'm quoting, "I too require passion in the classroom. I need the intense preoccupation of a group of children and teachers inventing new worlds as they learn to know each other's dreams. To invent is to come alive. Even more than the unexamined classroom, I resist the uninvented classroom." That's on page 50. And something that I think is really important when it comes to connecting adults and children is the passion. Like, children can pick up on their teacher's passion so much more vividly than we think. I think children learn a lot just from taking into account the attitudes and motivations of their teacher. They can really tell when a teacher loves to teach and when they don't. So when children are in a classroom where they feel like what their teacher is doing is something that their teacher loves, the children will in turn interact with more rigor than other children would with a teacher that is not passionate about teaching. Second example I have is that Vivian Paley and her in The Girl with the Brown Crayon, it really encourages play as curriculum, so as not to interrupt pre-existing curriculum. So that's on page 75, where she talks about what school usually does is continually interrupt any attempt on the part of children to recapture the highly focused intensity of play. And there are so many studies that demonstrate how play is so effective in learning. And there's lots of different stages that children go through in their age ranges and grades where play is more vital than sitting down and going through curriculum. But really, play is so necessary. Children, especially younger children, have so much energy that they need to get off. So when you incorporate learning with play, they can learn while simultaneously equilibrating their energy levels. So a really common problem within kindergarten, first grade, second grade classrooms is kids just can't sit still through all this sitting down at the desks and reading and writing and math. Those are all good techniques and things that they need to learn how to do. But at that young of age, it's so important to incorporate creativity within their learning, and that way that they will absorb that so much better and they'll remember. Because when you incorporate physical elements like art or like physical motion, like they're doing skits or they're running around or something with their hands or something tangible that they can create, the information that they're learning from that is so much more ingrained in them, and they're going to remember that so much better than if they were just sitting at a desk and reading and writing about the material. Third point that I have is on it's actually pages 78 through 80, and this is really where my psych major starts to come out, but I think this book does a relatively good job of introducing techniques for interacting with children you'll have in your classroom that have social and sensory disorders like autism. Oh my gosh, I have a really personal connection with this. There are so many children in the classroom who have social impairments or they have sensory disorders like autism, and they're viewed as weird, they're viewed as different, or they're not properly attended to than the other children. And particularly in the book from pages 78 through 80, there's a chapter on forgiveness in which Oliver, our character, our child who seems to have some sort of sensory processing disorder, has a meltdown and he becomes overwhelmed due to too much stimuli. He wrecks Rini's project and Rini is yelling at him and he's very upset. He doesn't understand what he did, and Vivian Paley really, she sits with Rainey and Oliver both, and what's really important within this is that there's an explanation. A lot of the time, I think teachers tend to neglect explaining to the other children what this child with a sensory disorder is dealing with. Once children understand some of the characteristics of whatever disorder or issue that the given child is dealing with, it is so much easier for children to be accepting of that. I really like in this story how a lot of these children accept Oliver for who he is, and they appreciate how much Oliver is invested in his art. And Oliver really seems to use his art and his drawing as a coping mechanism to deal with social interaction. And the children go with it, and it's great. It's really amazing how Vivian Paley sits Rainey down and tells her that, things are scary for Oliver. Oliver doesn't understand these things, and maybe you can help him through it with this, method. And those are just definitely really important things that need to be addressed further in classrooms from my perspective. And then overall, page numbers aside, I think the book does a really good job of demonstrating how important diversity in the classroom is, and how it's important to bring up these tough topics like race and gender, and all these controversial things that the children will continue to deal with throughout their schooling and throughout adulthood in the real world. It's a great introduction to all of that, and I think it really sets the stage for teachers to be like, how can I engage with my children in a more dynamic way than just sitting them down and walking them through Common Core material. So ultimately, yes, I think this is a good book for teachers of young children, and it's just a great example of how teachers should be running their classrooms.